Welcome to Brian Keane Fitness Podcast, where we talk everything fitness, nutrition and mindset with your host Brian Keane.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Brian Keane Fitness Podcast. We talk everything fitness, nutrition and mindset to help you with your goals. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to talk about irritable bowel syndrome, leaky gut, or anyone with stomach problems, and basically my own story, my own background, and how I fixed a lot of my own stomach issues. So this has been really heavily requested on my Instagram, Snapchat and Facebook, particularly for anyone that's been following me for the last 18 months or so. I've talked a lot about how I fixed my stomach problems, my own irritable bowel and leaky gut syndrome. So I'm going to spend today's episode talking about all the things that I've done over the last 12, 18 months, from nutrition that I've used, foods that I've cut out, triggers that I've avoided, supplements that I've used to heal my gut, and how I've played around with my training sessions in order to fix my irritable bowel and leaky gut. So anybody that has any issues with either leaky gut syndrome or just irritable bowel where your intestines spasm, or have stomach issues in general and find that they've got problems with bloating and struggle a lot with just stomach swelling, hopefully you guys will get a lot of value from this episode. So just to give you a little bit of a background, I have struggled with stomach issues most of my life. It's pretty hereditary. My mum is similar. I'm in the process now of trying to fix her gut and fix her stomach, but it's something that I've struggled with all through my teens, and it kind of came to a head point in when I was about 22. I was at a party. I was living in California, and I was at a fraternity party in a big massive campus in California in UC Berkeley. I had spent the summer on a J1 where I'd been eating a lot of fast food, mostly processed ingredients, a lot of protein bars, and probably my own body weight in alcohol. I drank most nights, and this culminated in me having to be brought to a hospital halfway through a party because an ulcer in my stomach started to bleed, and I had to be put up in a US hospital. That was kind of my turning point in terms of I was out of shape. Probably for the first time in my life, I had more or less stopped training, and I was eating poor foods and I was drinking way too much, but it completely ruined my stomach. So after that point, I spent a week in hospital. I came out, and then I realized that I needed to educate myself on nutrition, on different supplements. I was still taking things like fat burners during this time, to try and keep my weight down. When I look back now, it was so fucking stupid, but you don't realize I just wanted to party, and I wanted to have abs, and I wanted to be lean, even though I was out of shape when I look back at it. But it was just where my head was at the time. But coming out the other side, I had to educate myself largely on the different effects that foods have on my own stomach, and years that I battled with irritable bowel and leaky gut syndrome since then. So for anyone that doesn't know about IBS or leaky gut, basically it's where there's you have your intestinal wall and there's a hole in your intestinal wall, and what happens is the food particles start to leak out through the gut, and it sends an autoimmune response, and your intestines start to spasm, and your body basically thinks it's being attacked by invaders. I struggled when I lived in London and worked as a teacher for nearly 5 years. I struggled and battled with IBS regularly, to the point that I missed nights out. I actually had to take days off work sick when I'd have an IBS attack. It would put me into bed for 2-3 days. So I spent a lot of time researching different foods, different supplements, and different strategies to try and fix it. So I'm going to share them in this episode. 18 months later, where I'm at now, I haven't had an IBS attack. I haven't had stomach issues in probably the last 9 or 12 months. I like to think of IBS and leaky gut and anyone with stomach issues as managing it as opposed to getting rid of it, because you never really get rid of IBS. You never really get rid of leaky gut. You never really get rid of stomach problems, but you can massively manage it. I know that if I go back eating certain foods and go back drinking certain drinks or taking certain supplements or training a certain way, that it'll flare back up again. So I find that I manage it. So I'm going to spend this episode talking about the different strategies that I've used in the hopes that a few of them will land with you and you'll be able to apply them and give yourself a much higher quality of life. Because I remember how poor my energy levels were, how my mood used to be just up and down. One of the things that happens with a lot of people that have gut issues is your mood can go up and down. Serotonin, which is like our happy hormone, the precursor for serotonin happens in the gut. Normally when you think precursor of any hormone, you normally think the brain, but serotonin, actually 95% of that is produced in the gut. So there's a big correlation between people with irritable bowel syndrome and leaky gut and actual mood going up and down, because you don't have a stable input of serotonin, which is like the happy hormone you get from, say, chocolate or training, and different things can set it off. So it's a really interesting area to look into, and I know from personal experience that it's something that I suffered with for years, where my mood would just go up and down, and if I had an IBS attack or my stomach would swell or feel bloated, my mood would be affected for the whole day, and then I'd be trying to get myself back on track the next day. Just as a disclaimer, I am not a doctor. I'm not telling anybody this is what you need to do. I'm going to share my own experience as somebody that struggled and had a really poor quality of life as a result, and would lose days at work, days training, and just be constantly worried about it, and the anxiety and the fear of going out and a food swelling your stomach or being bloated through your t-shirt or whatever it is, would have social anxiety that really, really affected me. So this episode is based on telling you what I've done and how I've come out the other side. I don't have that issue at all anymore. Thankfully, in the last 9 to 12 months, I've had no problem. And as long as I manage it and stay on top of everything, I never get any problem with it. So the first thing is going to be food. What I found the biggest thing with anybody that I've worked with that came through my online program that has irritable bowel or leaky gut or any stomach issues is finding your trigger foods. This is very hard one to say, well, this food is definitely a trigger, because everybody responds really differently. However, there are certain ones you can look out for that do tend to affect 80 to 90% of people that have irritable bowel and have sensitive stomachs. Things like gluten, sugar, dairy are just known triggers for sending your body into a higher inflammatory state. And if any of those food particles slip out through the intestine, it can set off an IBS attack in people. So that's one thing to kind of keep an eye on. People that don't even have irritable bowel or leaky gut, or just have stomach issues and bloating and swelling, normally cutting gluten and dairy and sugar to a degree will eliminate it nearly overnight. It's absolutely incredible. I know myself, if I take any gluten, if I take any sugar, if I take any dairy more so than sugar, my stomach will just feel a little bit bloated. That being said, I have found when you heal your gut, and I'm going to share a lot of those strategies in today's episode, when you heal your gut, you can actually reintroduce some of those food. As long as they're not the majority of the food you're eating, you'll be fine. I normally live a lot of my life now by the 80-20 principle, the Pareto principle, that if 80% of my food is right, I can afford that 20% of gluten or dairy or sugar or whatever it is. I actually don't eat gluten at all anymore, and I haven't in years. But dairy, sugar, I can afford to have ice cream at the weekend with Holly, or I can go out and have chocolate, or I can go out and have a few drinks and not have any effect on me, because my gut has been healed and I know the strategies to put in place and the supplements to take and the foods to eat so I don't exacerbate any problem. So the first thing is going to be finding your triggers. What I would advise you do, there's a great book. It's one of those IBS for Dummies book that has a list of all the triggers in it. I think if you even Google search IBS triggers, it's going to bring up a big list of different foods that affect people. If you're someone that has leaky gut or IBS, I'm using them interchangeably because they're very similar, and they're normally just used interchangeably. It would be to check out the different trigger foods and trial it. Things like dark chocolate, red wine, certain foods that you just wouldn't think would be a problem tend to be really, really high trigger foods for some people. For example, I can't have eggs because eggs were very, very high trigger food for me. So I avoid them completely, even though there's other people that have IBS or have stomach problems and do amazing with eggs, and they're an incredible food, particularly egg yolks. If you get free range organic eggs, you're going to get a lot of omega-3 in the egg yolk, but I can't consume them because it doesn't set well with me because they are trigger foods. But I can eat dark chocolate and it does absolutely nothing on me. It's perfect and it's fine. But then there's other people who will find that as a trigger food and it'll just set off an IBS attack nearly instantly, and basically the intestines will just start to spasm if you consume those foods. The one thing to look out for, and this is what took me so long to find out what my trigger foods truly were, was you're not always going to get the effect directly after the time you consume the food. So for example, I know for me, cottage cheese is a trigger food because the high dairy, and particularly before I heal my gut, it used to trigger off my IBS. But if I had that food for breakfast, I may have 2 or 3 meals in between that time, and then my stomach would start to swell later on in the day, and I would put it down to the food I had right before my stomach swells, which may have been, chicken and rice or broccoli or sweet potato, when in fact it was the cottage cheese from the morning that was triggering me. And then when I eliminated the cottage cheese and kept all the other foods and just replaced it with something else, I found that my stomach was absolutely perfect on it. So it's a case of having a little bit of trial and error with certain foods. It did help me understanding what most people's triggers were, because then I was able to eliminate those foods and then reintroduce other ones. So for example, I pulled out dark chocolate, and then when I reintroduced it, it actually didn't have any negative effect on me at all. I kept it in, and then I built a nutritional plan around that. So for example, I had people come through my online program who basically have known about my history of IBS and leaky gut, and they come through my online program because I'm able to work with them and build a plan with them and pull their triggers that will have a very negative effect on their body. So what I would advise you do is have a think and start planning your nutritional strategy and start introducing foods and pulling out foods and building a plan that avoids all the things that are going to trigger your IBS. The next thing that massively impacted me was spacing my meals out so that I was eating every 2.5, 3 hours. What I used to do, because obviously I grew up in an Irish family in the country, we were kind of born and bred off the good sized breakfast, small lunch, and then a massive dinner. And that works for some people. Personally, for fat loss and muscle building, I prefer to space your meals because it keeps your blood sugars more stable, which keeps your energy levels higher, which means you can have a higher life quality on top of a higher training output because of energy levels being more stable through the day. But there's some people that will function fine off breakfast, lunch, and dinner. However, if you're someone that has leaky gut or IBS, that massive meal late in the day and spacing your meals so that you're going long distances or long durations without eating is going to have a very, very negative effect on your actual digestion. What I found would happen to me, and still happens to me if I don't stay on top of this, is if I go 5, 6, 7 hours without eating and then I have a meal, I tend to overeat in that meal because I'm hungry, and then I can't break down the food and digest it, and I end up getting a very swollen stomach, and then the next thing an IBS trigger and my stomach stays swollen, and you'll get that jump between constipation or diarrhea depending on the type of leaky gut or IBS that you get, or else your stomach will just stay swollen and won't come back down until the next morning. I've had a lot of girls, particularly guys as well, but a lot of girls come through my online program that after 2 or 3 weeks of fixing the nutritional plan, their stomachs just completely flattened out, down to the fact that they'd removed the triggers and stop getting that bloating and swelling through the stomach. Sometimes body fat can be very, very low on people, but it's just the fact that your stomach is so swollen you can't see. It's not body fat. You can't pull at it. It's a swell in the stomach like you're, 6 months pregnant. That's literally how my stomach would go if I ate a trigger food, and when my IBS would go off, my stomach would swell to that of someone that was 5 or 6 months pregnant. So it's very important to avoid that. And what I found helped me was spacing my meals so that I was eating every 2.5, 3 hours. I normally go breakfast, 2.5, 3 hours later, a small snack, 2.5, 3 hours later, lunch, 2.5, 3 hours later, a small snack, and then I'll have my dinner 2.5, 3 hours later again. And that's generally what works very well for people. That being said, you also get a massive benefit of keeping your blood sugar stable, which can actually, assuming your calories are on point, you have your nutritions and your macros calculated to support your goals, you can actually lose body fat and build more muscle by spacing your meals like that. It's just a real side benefit of getting everything on point. It's why a lot of people that I've worked with that have IBS, when they've got all the triggers out and we've worked through their nutrition, they tend to get very, very fast results, because not only are you not getting the swelling, you're getting better digestion from your food, you're feeling better about everything, your training output and energy levels are higher, but you're also giving your body the ability to lose body fat or build muscle more efficiently because it's not worried about trying to digest those foods. If you're finding that your stomach is swelling after every meal, it's a sign that your digestion is not going to be perfect. You're not going to absorb all the nutrients that's in the food you're eating. So it's really important to get that right. Hey everyone, this is Brian from the Brian King Fitness Podcast. I just want to take a quick 90 seconds to thank you all for downloading the podcast and tell you about my 6-week top 50 online program. It still blows my mind to see the thousands of downloads every week, so thank you all so much. What if I told you you could lose body fat, build muscle, or tone up all without putting your life on hold? One of the things that irks me in fitness is people saying that you need to train for an hour and a half every day or do loads of cardio to get in good shape, or silly things like you need to avoid putting milk in your coffee or completely eliminate alcohol or else you're going to get fat. It's The truth is, you can get into incredible shape by eating certain foods, timing your meals properly, and following a training program that is in exact alignment with your specific goals. And you can do this without putting your life on hold. The right program should fit into your lifestyle and schedule and not the other way around. Whether you're a guy or a girl, think about how good it would feel losing body fat and building muscle or toning up, all because you have the right systems in place. You didn't have to starve yourself, you didn't have to spend hours and hours in the gym, or even try and piece together different workouts and nutritional plans together yourself in the hope that they worked. With my Top 50 program, you'll have a full blueprint on how to best time your meals, what foods to eat, all your macro calculations, and different recipes to help keep you on track. My philosophy on nutrition is to help you find the strategies, foods, and systems that work best for your lifestyle and goal, so your diet just becomes the way you eat and not a diet you're following. Also, have you ever found yourself thinking, am I doing this exercise right? Or is this the best way to lose fat, tone up, or build muscle? I remember that feeling too well. Imagine the peace of mind knowing exactly how to do every exercise at home or in the gym, and knowing that your training program is in exact alignment with your specific goals, and seeing your body composition change as a result. Everyone has different nutritional preferences, lifestyles, and schedules, and my Top 50 program is the only program where I work with each person through the Top 50 Facebook group. Here I do weekly Q&As with everyone in the program, and this is where we can tweak and adapt training and nutrition to make the program perfect for you. Not only that, but you'll also have one of my online coaches working with you Monday to Friday to make sure that there's no stone left unturned in getting you into amazing shape. Every program is capped at 50 people, so once the group hits 50 people, it closes until the next round. So for more information or to sign up for the next 6-week Top 50 online program, head over to my website, www.briankeenfitness.com, or email me on brian@briankeenfitness.com, and thanks again for listening. The last thing with nutrition that's really helped me was never skipping breakfast. This is a little bit of debate amongst fitness people that some will do intermittent fasting, and intermittent fasting works incredibly well. It's using your body's natural steroidal hormones. Ori Hofmekler's book, The Warrior Diet, or In Minimum Fat, Maximum Muscle, and Unlock the Muscle Gene are all based off the premise of intermittent fasting. So the science checks out very well on it. I've trialed it myself and it does work for fat loss. That being said, if you have irritable bowel or leaky gut or stomach problems, it's probably the single worst nutritional strategy you can follow, in my opinion. As someone that trialed it and went that long period without eating, I found that my digestion was off all day and I wasn't able to get myself back on track in terms of my stomach swelling on the first meal and then stay swollen for the entire day. So something I would advise everybody, even just to trial this, whether you stick with it long term, obviously every case is context dependent, but trial having a breakfast and try and keep it something high fiber like oats or porridge of some sort. And I normally add in some flaxseed oil or linseeds, omega-3, and something that's going to speed up and keep you more regular so that you don't get that bout of constipation or diarrhea that can come from people that have issues with their bowel and with leaky gut. So I would advise having a high fiber sort of breakfast, even some fruit. Apples are great with that, and something that's going to just get you set up for the entire day, on top of keeping your blood sugar stable for the day, which will steady out your energy levels and mean you're not going to be reaching for something sugary at lunchtime. It's also going to have a very positive impact on your own digestion as somebody that has had an issue with IBS, leaky gut, or stomach problems in general. Okay, so that's everything with nutrition. There's a couple of extra things that is going to be very case dependent. I find that I can't eat too late before bed, making sure that my head is elevated when I sleep. All of these things help me. But there's a lot of different tips and tricks that's going to work for each person. However, those nutritional strategies I have found the most effective for myself and with the people that come through my online program who have similar issues, and how they have a direct impact and very, very quickly, depending on how long you've been suffering with issues in your stomach, tend to have a very, very fast turnaround in terms of getting you back on track and getting the right plans in place, alongside using certain supplements to try and heal your gut. So there are certain supplements that I have that are go-to. The key is always going to be to supplement back in whatever your body is deficient in. So for example, if you're deficient in magnesium, it makes sense to supplement back in magnesium. If you're deficient in zinc, it makes sense to supplement back in zinc, and that's how supplements should always be used, to supplement back in whatever your body's not getting from food and nutrients that you're eating. However, there are a couple of supplements that I use as absolute staples for my stomach and for IBS particularly. For my stomach in general, I will always take a probiotic. I get asked pretty regularly on my Snapchats, if you could only choose one supplement, what would you choose? And you know, it depends on the goals, but people always think I'm going to say whey protein or rice protein or BCAAs or creatine. For me, it's a probiotic, because what it does is it puts the good bacteria back into your stomach. There's a lot of things in life like antibiotics that people take, different ingredients that you can take that are going to take some of the good bacteria out of your stomach. A probiotic will put that back in. I normally look for something with 7 to 14 strains and 40 to 80 billion bacteria to try and get my gut flora back right in my stomach. I normally just take it once or twice a day, but it's an absolute staple for anybody with stomach issues, and I find it works great for IBS sufferers as well. The next one then is particularly and very much for leaky gut people and IBS people, because it helps to reduce the spasms in the intestine, which effectively is what causes the cramps, constipation and diarrhea from IBS. And that's peppermint oil extra strength capsules. I get mine from just a regular Holland & Barrett's, the 200 mgs or mcg tablets. And I'll use 2 of those with every meal until it starts to settle down and it takes the bloating out of my stomach. What I find first is if my stomach is bloated and I'm finding an attack coming on, I get a little bit of acid reflux with the peppermint oil, but it tends to clear out whatever the swelling is in my stomach, because I know it's relaxing the intestinal, it's relaxing the actual intestine, which is starting to spasm. That's why a lot of people that have IBS will drink peppermint tea and drink aniseed tea, which is also a great ingredient or tea to drink in order to relax the actual intestinal wall and stop it from spasming. But I tend to find the supplement works very well for me because it's obviously in its extra strength. I have them on hand at all times, even though I haven't had an attack in probably a year now, thankfully. I still have them on hand purely for our own safety of mind, because I know they're going to work nearly straight away. And if I have my probiotics and my peppermint oil capsules, I know that at least if I eat a food that's going to trigger me, or I can feel it coming on from stress or whatever it is that's going to be your trigger, I can take those supplements and it's going to nearly effectively fix the problem in the space of a few hours, and I'll just space them throughout the day until the attack ceases or until it minimizes, and then I go back on track the following day. And they're the 2 main ones that I use. Again, as I said, the key is going to be supplementing back in whatever you're missing from your diet. There's things like ginger, slippery elm, things like that will also work for a lot of people, and I think I've trialed all of them, but I always come back to probiotics and peppermint oil capsules, and they're actually the only 2 that I keep on hand in case I have an attack or just for my own peace of mind. The last thing then is going to be making sure that you're getting your sleep and your training on point, and you're not going crazy with elevating your cortisol and stress. I know myself, and anyone that has IBS or leaky gut or just suffers from stomach issues. I had a stomach ulcer, so it's very, very similar. It can come down from a lot of stress that you put in your body, and stress is cumulative. It doesn't matter where it comes from, whether it's coming from somebody shouting at you at work or not sleeping or overtraining. That cortisol is cumulative. It's going to build up itself, and it doesn't matter what form it comes from. I like to think of your stress level like a 2-liter water bottle. If you fill it to the top, it doesn't matter whether that water bottle got filled with training or lack of sleep or someone shouting at you or deadlines at work, that you've only got 2 liters. You've only got that amount of stress and cortisol your body can take. So once you spill over, that's when all the negative effects come in. So it doesn't matter where they come from. I've given myself IBS attacks from being stressed out at work. I've given myself IBS attacks from trying to meet deadlines, from overtraining, from taxing my central nervous system with too much stimulants and caffeine. all of that creates a load of cortisol in your body and can have so much stress that you can set off an attack from it. And it doesn't matter what way it comes or where the stress is coming from, it can all trigger an attack. And as someone that I think has triggered an attack from every area, it's something that I watch now. One of the things that I stick to religiously now is getting a good night's sleep. Anyone following my Snapchat, BrianK019, I put my sleep supplements up there, my bedtime routine where I try and wind down. I've got the Swanwick glasses that I use, my white noise machine, so that I get a good night's sleep, because I found that every time that I wake up and I've only got 2 or 3 good hours of sleep, that I have an issue with my stomach the next day. And normally what I find is I'm so tired, I'm reaching for caffeinated drinks and I'm reaching for sugary foods, which can really set off your intestine. Things like caffeine will spasm your intestine, and that is why it's normally a high trigger food with people. That being said, I still drink 2 or 3 cups every day now, and as long as I have everything right, I can afford that 20% and it doesn't affect me. But my advice would be is to make sure you heal your gut first. When you're out the other side and you feel great, then start reintroducing some of those foods that you know may trigger you. And there's some you'll have to avoid forever. Like, I don't eat any gluten, I don't eat any eggs, because they're just trigger foods for me. But I can have a little bit of sugar, I can have a little bit of dairy, I can have caffeine, and it doesn't bother me because I've healed my gut with probiotics and spacing my meals and avoiding processed foods and ingredients that may trigger, or any other of the trigger foods that may trigger for you. So I would advise getting a good night's sleep. Introduce those supplements as you need to, and then getting everything with your nutrition based around finding your trigger foods and then applying it so that you're eating every 2.5-3 hours, so you're not overloading your digestive system, and that you're able to break down your meals and actually absorb your meals so that you're not swelling your stomach after every single sitting of food. Okay, so I hope this episode helped you loads, guys. A little bit different. As I said, find your triggers is going to be the key thing. You know, there's different things like alcohol, cigarettes that may trigger IBS in people as well. That's something you got to experiment with yourself, depending on your current lifestyle and schedule. But my main advice and takeaway would be find your trigger foods, start spacing your meals, stick with real foods, avoid any processed ingredients because they're normally high trigger foods in everybody, and then use the supplements that are going to heal your gut, and then try and get your stress levels in order so that you're not overtraining, you're getting good night's sleep, and that you're able to actually fix your gut from the inside. And as somebody that suffered for years and had a poor life quality because of it and came out the other side, and now I probably have more energy than I've ever had, and I'm more productive, my brain is clearer, my energy levels, my actual mood is more stable because of the serotonin is obviously working as it should. All of these things, you can come out the other side. It's just a little bit of trial and error. The hardest thing is getting your diet on point. I find the people that I work with in the program, when I'm able to talk to them about different triggers and changing around meals and changing around foods, it normally speeds up the process. But it's definitely something you can do in yourself, as long as you Google search what those trigger foods are and then start experimenting with it yourself, and then introducing those supplements and getting your lifestyle in order to try and get yourself back on track. So I hope you got loads of value from this episode. For more information on me, you can head over to my website, www.briankeenfitness.com. If you want any information on my programs or to sign up to my newsletter, head over to the website. My Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram is all Brian Keane Fitness. My Snapchat, BrianK019, which is probably my most active platform at the minute. Definitely check me out on there. I put all my supplements, my food, my training, and I try and open it up as often as I can for Q&As. So definitely follow me on there, BrianK019. And massive thank you to Colm over at Voxonic, who edits and puts together all my podcast episodes. Anyone that needs a podcast done, cannot recommend Colm enough. Thanks again, guys. Catch you soon. Hey everyone, as a thank you to everyone who subscribed to my podcast, I'm giving away 2 free programs every week for the month of April, 1 for each episode. My 2 flagship programs are the BKF online program, which is my male and female program that has everything you need to build muscle, lose body fat and tone up. Each version is based on your specific goals. And my GA Lean Body program, which is all the tools you need to get into incredible shape, whether that's to build muscle, tone up or lose body fat, while simultaneously improving your performance so you're fitter, faster and stronger on the pitch. For a chance to win whichever program fits your goals best, just subscribe to my podcast and leave an honest review, and I'll be picking 2 winners every week. Winners will be announced on my Snapchat, BrianK019, so be sure to follow me on there to see if you've won. I'm picking the winners from random reviews on iTunes and Stitcher, so thanks again for downloading and subscribing, and best of luck to everyone.